Hello, Story Seekers. I'm Ben.
I'm Nico, and welcome to the Tiny Bookcase. Right now, you're listening to our favourite part of the week.
Stories, discussion, and a high likelihood of gratuitous obscenities, all to sate the hunger of the bibliomancer Eusteris.
Our regular listeners will know how it works, but for the newcomers, Ben and I have both written a story to the same prompt.
We're about to share those stories with each other and you for the first time. Then we'll workshop them on mic. First, though, let's talk about burnout.
Yeah, I mean, we declared ourselves Burnout Kings last episode. I've got this massive long history of starting way too many projects. I try and balance everything, and eventually, it just means that my body suffers for it.
Yeah.
There is only so much that a processed energy drink could do for you before you actually hit that burnout, and you have to find an approach that's kinder for your body and your brain, and that is where Magic Mind comes in. Because having one of their shots with my morning coffee actually sets the groundwork for a more productive day rather than spinning around the drain, you know?
Totally. Yeah, I've often had the same issue. As I said last week, my family are deep in the grind set, and the pressure to keep up with that can be really taxing. Luckily for the two of us, though, there are folks working on a serious alternative. Magic Mind have provided us with a link for our audience. You'll get 48% off a first subscription when you use that link, or 20% off a one-time purchase, which is pretty cool. You can go to magicmind.com/TTB20 to take advantage of it.
And it's not just witchcraft and miracles, no one used a cauldron in the process. These little drinks have got mushrooms, nootropics, and adaptogens, and over 100% of your daily requirement of vitamin C and D folded into ceremonial grade matcha. The supplement's been validated by doctors, and Magic Mind stay carbon neutral and support mental health charities. They ship it to over 65 countries and are so confident in the product that they have a 100% refund policy in place. The link for it is magicmind.com/TTB20.
Tell us how you get on with it. To keep things suspiciously relevant, however, here we are with part 2 to the prompt Magic, this time with our completed tales for the prompt Mind.
Mind. Impossible! The orb shimmered before me. Its glinting array of lenses darted between my face and my hands. I was trying to think of these as its eyes. But was that what they were? What, after all, is an eye to an extraterrestrial? I had no idea. I didn't want to bring it up in case they decided mine would be a good option for a closer look. I'd seen half a dozen of the orbs, getting intimately familiar with several other human internals as I fled through the city. I didn't want that to be me. To be my eyes. I liked my eyes, even if I do have to wear glasses to watch the telly. What is the nature of this transaction? Here once there was one ball. There are now 3. How is this so? I can't help myself. A magician never reveals his secrets. I donned the practiced look of smug superiority. I'd never actually taken my magic act on stage. It was kind of a confidence thing. I had, however, delivered a turn or two worthy of Penn and Teller into the full-length mirror in my bedroom. I always carried a couple of tricks on me. A coin to disappear from someone's ear. That's always a treat for the kids. A false thumb, string of scarves, a set of cups and balls, a set of foam balls, a rope. Just the essentials, really, in case there was a sudden need for an illusion. In my 32 years of practicing magic, that time had not previously come. I'd thought it had, once or twice, and had been reliably informed I was wrong. But now, in this strangest of scenarios, and it was the only thing between me and certain death. I panted while the alien cogitated a reaction. The sounds of a screaming city, blaring sirens, and a few relatively soft explosions drifted on the wind. I felt droplets of sweat prickle on my back. I couldn't remember the last time before today that I'd run. It spoke. This is marvelous. I will insist that your abilities are recorded by a second for posterity. The lenses on his front whirled a series of vibrant shades, and then it called again. Blimblop, come here. I must show you this human magician. The strange trilling whir of another of the creatures met my ear, growing in pitch and volume as it drew close. Perhaps my trick seemed a bad idea. It slowed the first of the alien pods, but my plan hadn't really extended beyond that. I'd sort of gotten carried away by what I was doing. I enjoyed the patter, the sense of wonderment, the pure, unadulterated thrill of it. That meant that when the time came, I hadn't decided if I was going to just peg it or try and bonk the floating ball with a bin lid or something. And that was calling for backup. And according to the news broadcast, there were thousands of them. Why do you summon me, Clambard? The new orb arrival spoke with something close to aggression. The strange, inhuman quality of their voices warped somewhat by its mood. I couldn't help but wonder if this was for my benefit. Were they somehow altering their speech to make me comfortable, or to make sure I knew my doom was coming? It wasn't doing much, however, to offset the light misting of something red on the orb. On its, I'll call it a face. I wasn't its first human today. Gaze upon the human known as Steve. The Magnificent. Steve the Magnificent. My apologies, Steve the Magnificent. Thank you, my dashing assistant. I said it as confidently as I could. I was distracted a bit. I was unfolding my collapsible top hat. Good fortune, I had remembered to stash my white gloves inside it. I attempted to put them on. The cheap felt clung to my sweat-soaked digits. I pocketed them instead. I am gazing, Clambard. Are you going to explode it? Negative. The lenses on the front of what I now knew to be Clambard flicked through a range of colours once more. This has to be part of their communication. Gaze upon the human. It will provide a visual treat. Clambard turned his lenses back on me. They flashed white, like a small wave across the array. Steve the Magnificent, I demand you repeat the duplication of the balls. I swallowed hard. The trick was never as good twice in a row. I'd have to be on my A game. I began the process of obscuring my false thumb, planting my foam balls where they ought to be. You, young man, what's your name? The second orb recoiled gently, floating back a few inches as I thrust a digit towards it. My what? He requires your designation, Blimblop. I didn't give it time to recover. Not while I had it on the back. Magnetic wave? Pulsar? Either way, on its back one. Blimblop, what do you see? Here. Orb? Red? Indeed. A red ball. A single red ball. I'm going to place that red ball here in my hand. I'll squeeze it tight. Now, say the magic word. Blimblop hovered silently. Its lenses dimmed to lightlessness. Quietly it spoke again. I do not know the magic word. Hocus pocus! Bellowed Clambard. Well, the magic words can be whatever you want them to be. It's your magic. I smiled broadly at the clearly confused orb. Its lenses ran a series of shades, as it thought. I would like the magic words to be Blimblop. It is soft again. There's an air of wonder in it. I think I have him. Say it loud and proud. Blimblop? Come on, you can do better than that. Blimblop. It rings off the alleyway walls. Pigeons take flight, and I'm sure a rat in a nearby bin dies of fright. Explosively, I open my hand, revealing there are now 2 balls in it. The lenses on Blimblop's orb flash orange. This is it? This is the complete cycle? Yes, it is good. The number may fluctuate as high as 3. It is obvious. I'm shaken by Blimblop's words. I knew the trick wouldn't be so good a second time. It never is. I open my mouth to apologise, to offer another trick. Of a set of collapsible pansies and a photo of Richard Nixon in my left trouser leg. I can probably do something with that. How so? Clambot has come to my defence. What a legend. The human clearly has a subdermal multiplication unit. Child's play. Humans have not mastered this technology. Yes, they have. Nuh-uh. In retrospect, I could have left at this point. That may well have been a good idea. I was wounded, however, in and around my pride. I can do another one. Yes, please, said Clambod. Fine, said Blimblop. Smartly from my pocket, I pull a length of rope and a second secret rope piece. There are magnets involved, and a pair of scissors. I don't have scissors. Gentlemen, I say it. I might be wrong entirely. Gaze upon this rope. I'm working in their patter like a real pro. I do not have a pair of scissors. Can one of you cut this rope? Right here. I gesticulate the rope in my hand and realise that if they misinterpret, I may be about to have a total of 5 fingers. I will sever it. Blimblop fires a steady beam of light from one lens, and the rope splits. Thank you, young man. Now, you see the rope is split, but with some effort and your magic word. Blimblop! They chorus. With a flourish, I reveal the now repaired rope. The orbs flash a series of lens colours and emit little whistling sounds. This is not subdermal duplication. No, it mends that which we have broken. The orbs spin a moment, and I take a bow. He has the fixer's gift. Clambot turns to look upon me, insomuch as it looks. Our fixers are perished all. You will repair our ship. We go now to her. I don't get a chance to argue. For a moment I feel like a sponge ball squashed in a fist. Then I split into 2 balls. Then I'm hot, and I feel my very essence split like a laser-carved rope. Then all is silent, and I wait for the big reveal. And the cosmic hand, such that it is, opens. The trick is being shown. The light here is strange. It clings to me. Imagine a fog that you could fold like a duvet. I don't understand how it works at all, but it settles on my shoulders and dangles down my back like a cape. It does in fact go with my look. It struck me just how silent everything had become. The backdrop of a planet mid-invasion had vanished. A white noise hum was everywhere. It may have been deafeningly loud, but without the context of any other sound, it was hard to tell. I decided to make a noise. Hello? It wasn't strong. I knew that. Neil Armstrong had said, hello, when he stepped into the moon. He would have looked a right Burke. Neil Armstrong had other people in Houston, and all I had was enough magic tricks to do a solid 40 minutes at a kid's birthday, and the skill to make them zing. Hello, a voice called back. It had the now familiar tang of the alien orbs. Hi there. I got teleported here by Clambod and Blimblop. I'm just looking for a way out, actually. I affected my most British of talents. Politeness to a fault. If I was going to be lost on an alien spaceship, I was going to be ready for any queue that might form, and ideally on first-name terms with someone in upper management. I am here. It was Clambod. I wasn't sure I should be relieved by the familiarity I felt. This human has the fixer's touch. I brought it here to fix. There was a long exhalation. I realised I was holding my breath. Fixer's touch, is it? The alien voice sounded like I'd cold called it. What is your designation, human? Uh, Steve. The Magnificent? Yes, I suppose you're right, Clambod. Steve the Magnificent, conjurer, master of the mystic, ball duplicator, and fixer. Well, yes, although strictly speaking, I didn't fix the balls, just for clarity. It was a rope, actually. I left out that I had, in fact, lobbed away the cut piece of rope and revealed a previously undamaged one. Right, Steve, of as yet unproven magnificence. It is good, muttered Clambod, under its lack of breath. One of my drones has bought you before me. I will test your worth. Bring him to my chamber. The journey through the ship was short. I walked, but the floor seemed to move. As I never turned any corners, yet in the dim light of my fog cape, I could tell that what was beside and behind me was changing. I thought while we walked about asking Clambod some questions. Where the fuck are we? How far from Earth are we? I've got a tenner in my wallet. If I give it to you, can I go home? They were the ones at the front of my mind. I didn't ask any in the end. Occasionally, Clambod would say, "Hocus pocus," quietly. I think he was rehearsing. We reached a door after what may have been moments or days. The whole place had that IKEA effect where it was impossible to really track the passing of time. I found myself very scared, hungry for meatballs, and once again wondering what the hell a lingonberry is. The door before me slid open, and the suddenness of the illumination was dazzling. An orb, much like the others, sat at its heart. It was the same in all ways except scale. The thing was bloody massive. Cables and lights wound away and into it from all directions. I have almost no technical knowledge on Earth, and here that was compounded. The half-baked idea I'd been unwittingly forming about killing or stopping or deactivating or whatever this thing was quickly quashed. Hello, I said. You've already said that. Here its voice was booming. Yes, I suppose I did, didn't I? Not very magnificent now. Genuflect before me. Show your human respects to me, the Mind Matron. I fell to my knees and tried not to imagine the orbs as prostitutes. It must have been a translation issue. Oh, matron, I am but a humble, magnificent magician. Bad start, but I ploughed on. I wish to be returned to my home. Please. There was a pregnant pause. No, your planet is being consumed for its knowledge. As we speak, you may be spared if what my Clambod claims is true. Do you have the Fixer's gift? It's a difficult position here. I took the option I felt best suited my state of continued aliveness. Yes, definitely. The lenses on the matron rippled a panoply of colours. Prove it! There was a heavy clunk, and a device of unrecognisable state and origin was dropped before me. The wiggling tendril that had placed it retracted into the huge sphere. Repair this! I realised I had exactly one option. Pretend to tinker, then be eradicated. I stepped forward, walked a circle around the chunk of alien technology, and discovered it was meaningless to me. I decided I had a second option. Would you like to see a magic illusion? Yes, bellowed Clambod. If you must. I put my hands into my pockets for a prop and felt in there my thick white gloves. Calmly, I gripped them and withdrew them along with a single trick coin. I probably didn't even know what coins were. Would it matter? I stepped as close to the matron as I dared and began my spiel. Right, here I have an ordinary coin, and I will close it in my hand, like so. I made a show of wrapping my palm around the disc of metal. The lenses dimmed, and the light in them seemed to focus on one central lens. I feel it scrutinizing me. In that moment, I felt oddly reasonable. It was this or death, just like it had been when I ran into that alleyway. This coin, you see, has incredible transitive properties. As we both know, it's here in my hand. Or is it? I opened my hand to reveal that the coin was not there. Sleight of hand works wonders against beings without hands. The central lens glows brighter. It's gone. Lost to the ether, but with the use of magic, I think we can bring it back. I stepped closer again. I could smell a strange, otherworldly stink on the alien metal, like oil and old fungus, black mold forced through a cheese grater. All we have to do is say the magic word. State the word so that this may be over. Time was short. I could hear Clambod, near silence, rapidly saying hocus pocus over and over again. But not this time. Oh yes, of course. The magic word is Blimblop! As I yelled, I opened my hand and thrust the white gloves in them in a jumbled mess. Luck was on my side and the body of the glove swaddled the focused lens. The creature has blinded me! Yelled the mind matron. Blimblop is the magic word! Called Clambod. Ah! I screamed and turned and began to run in what I hoped was the direction I'd come from. I thumped and banged off the walls as I went, pulling from my pockets anything that might help me. A shower of cards, a handful of glitter, 32 knotted together handkerchiefs, and then the coin. The coin I'd slipped away in preparation for the second half of the trick. It clanked and clattered, and I heard a voice. It has returned. The coin. It was Clambod. I stopped in my tracks. I was caught. Yes. Magnificent. The orb floated towards me. It stopped when I could feel the heat radiating from it. I am charged with eradicating you, Steve. Yes. Would you like to see a magic illusion? Yes. I didn't know what was coming. I am going to make you disappear. I think perhaps this time the magic word can be Clambod. The rise of hope in its voice. It was almost friendly. Yes, I think that will be fine, Clambod. Yes, magic time. Hocus pocus, Clambod! All was white, then grey. Then my vision resolved into an alleyway, a length of rope and 2 foam balls on the ground. Blimblop the orb was gone. Clambod, for some reason, had chosen to spare me. Perhaps it didn't want to lose my magic from the world. Perhaps it was a rebel agent of some kind and always worked against its matronly master. In truth, I think, it thought I would reappear moments later. Maybe even 2 of me. Of course, that was never going to work. It didn't know how. After all, a magician never reveals his secrets.
Oh, that's proper chuckle worthy, that isn't it? It's such a fun story. He gave me. Go on, sorry, go on.
So I am pleased that you that it kept its chuckle worthiness.
I think so. He sort of took on quite like a Ford Prefect kind of angle in the second part. I think, like, you know, he sort of becomes this, like, he's on a spaceship, but he is still just a dude.
Yeah.
I really liked the description of how the floor moved to
Yeah.
get them places. because that is odd. Because we know what travelators are and things like that, but
Yeah.
yeah, there was just something about it. Just the whole ship kind of folding space and time to just move in places that he could sort of semi perceive. That was
Yeah.
cool. I liked it. I thought that was that gave me a nice little sci-fi tickle. I like that a lot. I really liked the changes that you made to the first half as well. Um,
Yeah, I think your notes were very useful. It gave me a way to set up something for later as well, which was really cool.
very
I
cool.
think they definitely helped, and it's definitely setting the invasion more in the first part helps
Agreed.
a lot. I
Yeah,
think.
the red mist on the orb was really good because that was an addition, wasn't it? I don't remember that from
Yeah.
last time. Yeah. Yeah, I liked that a lot. Was like I'd called it was a really nice little simile. Um, just to really nail what that is because if you were reading it, obviously we'd lose your wonderful narration. But
Yeah.
that those little bits like that really bring a character to life without really needing to read them out. I like that a lot. Queen Robo Alien was cool. My only note on her was that I think you might be thinking of Madam, not Matron, because a matron is a head
Oh,
nurse.
yeah, I definitely was.
Yeah, yeah, that's okay. I think it says
That's
it's interesting that it says something about him because you're sort of world building for him, aren't you? That he would hear Madam and go straight to prostitutes anyway.
yeah,
Um, yeah, there was, but I feel like there's potentially space. Obviously, you've probably gone straight to the word limit, have you?
yeah. I've got like 30 words spare.
Classic. When you like the allusions to like the Madam stuff and the IKEA stuff, which was really funny, like it was inexplicably hungry for meatballs and wondering what the hell a lingonberry is, made me laugh. But like it would almost be cool to like tie those understandings of the world, like he's trying to make sense of the world to like either like people in his life
Yeah,
or specific outlooks of his or something. I don't know. It's they're really good as observations. I'm just wondering whether we could sort of like level them up a bit by forcing them to do some world building, some character building for you as well. Um, the great scream when he gets when he runs away when he puts the glove on the on the eye. That was that felt off the cuff. Did you practice that scream? I think everyone
no,
wants to know if you practice your screams.
I did not. I got to it and remembered that I'd written it and went, "Oh, I need to do a screen."
Yeah. I did think your I would like the magic word to be Blimblop was a slightly better version last week than this
I
week.
think,
I think
yeah, I
it,
think I had a better take.
it was fine. It changed the meaning of it. I think the meaning the outlook of the Blimblop character was the thing that made it like super funny for me last time.
Yeah,
But I still laughed, so it was still funny.
good.
Yeah, Clambod just repeating Hocus Pocus to himself to practice and be ready for his moment. Jesus fucking Christ! Unhinged.
I, one of the changes that I was really happy with because you'd said about make him really lean into the Steve the Magnificent was
Yeah,
naming Clambod as his assistant at the beginning. Saying, "Oh, my assistant," because it just gave Clambod a reason to be so into it.
he was so on board. It was great.
I
What?
I
Oh, sorry.
I really wanted that when I was writing it initially. I wanted Blimblop to save the day by screaming Blimblop and sort of flying through the alien queen thing, but I just couldn't think of any reason why he would.
No.
So, it's really fun, but it would not happen. It would be so dumb if I just did it. So I didn't.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky one to end that, isn't it? Because it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds up and up and up, and this character goes from being in a fairly difficult starting position, i.e., Earth has been invaded, um, to being on a spaceship fuck knows where.
Yeah,
Um, difficult one to end, I think, and beyond doing something where he can like maybe he can fix it, maybe like it's like a simple problem to fix. You know how like they have blind spots, like they don't know
yeah.
what
Like,
magic is.
oh, it's not plugged in.
Yeah,
That sort of thing.
something like that, where it's like the fixer's gift turns out to be like mild tech support.
Yeah,
Um, I think that would lean in really well because I think obviously because we know you do like IT tech support in your day job.
Yeah.
I bet you could write something really funny where that's like the kick for the character to like save his life. Again, thinking very Ford Prefect, like the occasional bits of knowledge that he actually does have that matter get him
Yeah.
out of situations occasionally, but most of the time he's just running for his life or
Oh,
completely out of his depth.
there's definitely a gag for they've lost access to the memory banks, and he's like, oh, it's actually if you turn the router over, the passwords it's just on the back.
It's on the back. Yeah.
Unless someone's changed it, which they might have done, but most people don't.
I was speaking to a fan about this because your story went down very well with them, and they were wondering whether you were gonna end it on turn it off and on again.
So see that.
Could have been the same thing. Yeah, I think obviously you end on the never a magician never reveals his secrets. I think that's a strong ending. It's like a really good line. I had another one. Oh yeah, when he gets teleported up to the ship.
Yeah.
Could you read that line for me again? Like there's how many? It sounded like you said split, like maybe 2 or 3 times.
I was referencing all the different tricks he'd done, and I realised actually I've read through it a bunch of times, and it wasn't until I was reading it out then I realised that he broke twice because he says I split into 2 balls, and I'm hot, and I feel my very essence split. And that should be break or tear or something.
Something, yeah, just to get it to scan. There was also, I think there was a bit where Clambod, you say Clambod has come to my defense.
Yeah.
Which is present tense. So so like
that's probably a typo.
Yeah, rather than came to my defense or something.
Yeah. I think it would have been had come rather than.
I don't want to know how you make Clambod come. Let's not go into that.
Use the magic words.
You said when he gets teleported up to the ship and he goes hello. You did a perfect imitation, and I'm gonna describe this video for people because if you haven't seen it, you need to go and find it. But basically, it's like some old phone camera dude. Recording, looking through into somebody's basement where there's somebody sat on a sofa watching TV, and then he does this enormous fart by the window, and the guy inside freaks out like there's ghosts and screams out "Hello!" in exactly the way that you said it when he ends up on the spaceship.
I'm glad you picked up on it because it was fully a reference to that.
Was it? Oh, yeah. Fantastic! Oh, fantastic!
That hello was meant to. It's there for you, really, Ben, because I know how much we have laughed at that video.
Well, I think we've just given people an insight into the dumb shit that makes me laugh. So,
us, my friend.
Us. Oh gosh, can't get the words Zaphod Beeblebrox out of my head, which is, I think, a good thing, because you are heavily influenced by Douglas Adams, and
I am.
That felt like your voice in that tone.
It's really interesting, like reflecting on it now. Looking at it through a Hitchhiker's Guide lens. It is interesting that you're Arthur Dent or this Steve the Magnificent.
I mean Arthur Dent, don't I? Not Ford Prefect.
Yes.
The human character, yeah. Sorry, that's my bad.
But the Steve the Magnificent or Arthur Dent, it is funny that they're always just a bit of a dickhead. Because Arthur is a miserable sod. But your touchstone, you have no choice but to sort of go along with him. And
yeah,
I think that does make it for more. It means you don't mind as much when the weird, awful things happen to them, but they're still human, so you're still on their side. I think that is.
And it's
I think if this guy was,
it's just they happen to also be a dick.
Yeah, if this guy was nice, I'd have been kinder to him. I think in the story.
Yeah, like I was saying about like linking some of the like analogies and similes and stuff to build the character a bit more. Like the IKEA one could be like him remembering being abandoned in IKEA by his family because they don't like him. Because the impression is that he's this like close-up magic wanker that's a bit incelly, right? That's the yeah. So
there's definitely a joke about going there to buy the bed for your first place with a partner, leaving with a bed but without a partner.
That's it. That's exactly the kind of stuff. I think it's good. I think it could almost be like you could do more. Like you could write more words on this one. I think this could go up to like 5K.
I think. Do you know what it was when it was the normal word count? I was like, I would be comfortable with that as a story. And as soon as I had more room to stretch, I felt like I didn't have enough words to tell the story I wanted to tell.
Yeah, no, I had
Which
a
is
similar
it's
feeling.
fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's because obviously we verge on flash fiction with our word limit normally. That
Yeah,
if you do write towards the bottom, I know we don't often do, but like the 800 words is essentially it's like a slightly long flash fiction, which typically tops out around 500. So and the storytelling difference between 800 words telling a full story and 3,000 words, which is what these stories are this week,
yeah,
because they're double stories for us, is completely different. It's not a different beast, but it's like a cousin.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very different. I had similar sort of issues. I think we're gonna potentially talk about some structure stuff after my one, but yeah, I liked it. It was funny. I think it works well, but like I would go harder on the Arthur Dent stuff, harder on
Yeah,
the similes, like do a bit of like continue to construct the character of this guy as he goes through this process, so that when he does freak out and put the glove over the remaining lens, that is, of course, what he's going to do. But it will still take people by surprise because
yeah,
it's so explosive. I think that would work quite well. Or, the tech support thing that we were talking about would also work. But like it works completely well as it is. It just feels like I actually want to hear more of you in this voice because it's your voice, but in the tone of a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of story.
yeah.
I mean, really, if you don't write a book in that way at some point, I feel like you've not done yourself justice because
Fine,
it would be
I'll
it
learn
would
how
be
to do
so
sci-fi.
fucking good. it would just be so good, and you can just sort of see it, like as an audience member, I can just see it that you could do that really really well. So nice work, and
Thank you.
I guess do more.
All right, I'll give it a go, but first you have to read me a story. That's the deal.
Okay, all right. The Mind Soaker struck a match and lit another of his strange cigarettes as he pored over her family records. Agnella watched golden motes in the smoke sparkle when he exhaled, and followed it with her eyes as it roiled through the air to escape her home politely through the open window. How does it know to do that? She asked him. Magic, replied the Mind Soaker without looking up. With smooth skin and old eyes, he appeared ageless. Agnella approved that he wore his brown hair in a military ponytail, the sure sign of a veteran. She knew that his kind were credited with winning the war, but nobody really knew how they had done it. Their relentless census taking had grown their reputation as annoying bureaucrats, but Agnella felt instinctively that magic users would not do something so boring without good reason. She realized she was picking at her nails and quickly folded her hands together to still them. Although she couldn't see them through the window, she heard her kids shouting at each other outside, arguing over the rules of their game. Agnella's view was limited to the cobbles of the road and the covered well the village shared. She let her thoughts wander as she waited for the Mind Soaker's questions. The stumpy shadow of the well meant it was close to noon, and the surprising heat of the autumnal day meant the clothes on the line would be nearly dry. Bellis was out re-thatching the Chet's house, and he'd need his lunch soon, or he'd be in a grump later. One of the kids would have to take it to him. Agnella stood up from her seat at the kitchen table and quickly assembled some cured sausages, an apple on the verge of wrinkling, and a wedge of weak cheese. She tied them into a bundle with one of the kitchen cloths her sister had given her as a wedding present. The fabric bore an embroidered kingfisher and was covered in the small stains even a well-loved practical cloth accrues over the years. Bellis wouldn't mind, he'd just smile to see she'd packed him an extra sausage. When she opened the back door, the three children froze like deer staring at the glinting tip of a hunter's arrow. The bigger boy had scooped his elder sister up in one arm and had his little brother in a headlock with the other. Bertie, put them down and take this to your father, Agnella said, and then raised her eyebrows to wordlessly communicate that all three of them were standing on the creaking ice of her limited patience. The boy released his siblings and sheepishly took the bundle from his mother before scampering off towards the north side of the village. You two, go and scrump me some apples. We'll make a pie later. Agnella watched them run off. She smiled, admiring the lovely simplicity of their safe lives, and then frowned when the Mind-Soaker cleared his throat behind her. Can you verify the children's parentage? He asked. Agnella closed the door and walked back to her seat before replying. Well, old Bess, the village... Take again. Well, old Bess, the village midwife, can tell you I was the one split open by all three, if you want to hear about that sort of thing. The Mind-Soaker nodded and stubbed out his cigarette in the dish she had provided. 3 crumpled butts stuck out of the yellow ash pile, like the angled tines of a fishing spear. And Bellis is the father of all 3? Yes. Agnella tried not to bristle with the indignation she felt. The Mind-Soaker leant back from her anger and calmly took a 4th cigarette from the case he kept in the breast pocket of his grey uniform. He ran the tight cylinder across his bottom lip to wet it, before reaching for his matches again. Mild irritation swept across his features when he discovered the box was empty. It was the first emotion she had observed in him. I have some for the stove, she offered. No need, thank you. Instead, the Mind-Soaker clicked his thumb. Take it again. Instead, the Mind-Soaker clicked his thumb and little finger together. Agnella flinched when a small blue flame sprouted from the nail of the finger. He used it to light his cigarettes before... Oh, fuck. He used it to light his cigarette before shaking his hand to extinguish it. Your daughter was born before the war? Yes. You were in the King's Cavalry? 3rd Regiment, correct? I was. I've read your record. It's distinguished. But you were discharged for unspecified medical reasons just before the treaty was signed. Yes. Agnella answered him simply and refused to say anything more when he let the silence between them drag on. So, why did you join up? My parents and Grandam were killed when the Cozzos raided up the Big River. My sister went to Licata to be in the city, and I thought it might make me feel better to pay them back some. So I joined up. The Mind-Soaker nodded. The middle child, Albert, was born shortly after your return. Who is his real father? Please, do not lie to me again. Agnella winced as she felt her resolve disappear. There was a war on? Who is the father? A Kozo sailor I met during the sack of Myth Tandu. Met? At Sabre Point. I was blood mad and he was handsome for a Kozo. He was just a boy, really. But he looked like the enemy to me then. I forced him. War crimes remain crimes outside of war. I know. The Mind-Soaker took out a notebook and jotted her revelations in it. It was dog-eared and likely filled with unofficial secrets which belied the truths of the census. She felt strangely lighter after unearthing the crime and lies she had long ago buried. There had been no point in concealing it from a Mind-Soaker, not if he had taken an interest in her Bertie. Will all of this go on the census? Agnella asked. No, he replied. What's the point then? Nothing nefarious, I assure you. I won't let you take him anywhere, said Agnella, trying to remember where she had stowed her old sabre. She suspected the Mind-Soaker was armed with more subtle things than just the dagger he wore, but she doubted he was a match for her skill, even if she had let it rust. I don't intend to take him from you, but I will need to examine and soak him. In return for your permission, I will not alter his parentage in the official census, and your husband need not know any more than he already does. Are we agreed? Agnella, hearing only the points she understood, quickly replied, Yes. The Mind-Soaker gave her a thin smile to show his appreciation before standing and removing the grey jacket of his uniform. He folded it neatly and lay it over the back of his chair before rolling up the sleeves of his collarless white undershirt. Have you a wash urn or other deep bowl? I would appreciate if you could fetch it whilst I draw water from the well. Half in a daze, she went outside to retrieve the big copper basin the family used to keep themselves clean. As she picked it up from where it leant against the back of the house, a gust of chill air caused her to look up at the sky. Agnella, her practical nature overriding the strangeness of her visitor, saw bruise-coloured clouds rolling towards the village on the wind and made the decision to bring the washing in. She moved methodically along the sagging line, which was loaded with garments ranging in size from her youngest small tunics to the massive shirts that Bellis required. She used the dry bowl as a basket to help her, and with each piece of clothing she removed, memories of the man and children they belonged to filled her up until she was smiling. When Agnella reached the tree at the other end of the line, her smile fell away. The cord was attached at that end by a knot to the curved basket hilt of her lost sabre. The blade was wedged into a crook in the tree's limbs. She vaguely remembered being heavily pregnant with her youngest, when a sudden bout of frustration that the line was too low had caused her to use the weapon to make it higher. There you are, she muttered to herself. Agnella considered the weapon for a moment before reaching up to rip it from its perch. The knot in the cord was swollen, but she deftly freed the sabre from the line after a moment's patient fiddling. Sabre reclaimed, washing folded, bowl fetched, Agnella returned to her kitchen to find the mind soaker had brought in a bucket of water from the well and was fussing with a rolled-up set of alchemical vials. Thank you. Please place it on the table, he said. She noticed he had not looked up at her yet and quickly leant the sabre against the stove where he would not see it before setting the bowl down on the table. She removed the clean clothes from it and set them aside as she studied the vials. A shiny metallic substance filled them, and Agnella watched it slosh like a liquid. What is that? She asked. Quicksilver, mostly. Is it dangerous? Not to the boy, and I have done it many times. Albert, she corrected him, and he replied with a small, chastised nod. You will need to lower the back of his head into the bowl when I have emptied one of my vials into the water. I will then use my magic to put energy through the mixture. You should not be alarmed when it emits light. That is quite normal. We shall soak his mind, and then, when I tell you, you will be able to withdraw him safely. Why? Agnella needed to know, and spoke hurriedly, as she knew the boy would soon return from delivering her husband's lunch. Why Albert? The mind soaker nodded, as though he had expected the question sooner. Rather than returning to his seat, he leant casually against the wall by the window before replying. I can smell prophecy. All of my order can. It reeks like orange peel left to rot in urine. The mind soaker used the last glowing inch of his cigarette to light his next one, then discarded the butt out of the open window. After a long drag, he released a small cloud of smoke in which the golden motes danced once more. Greatness was previously something of an abstract quality. During the war, we learned how to seek it, measure it, and deploy it. We had to. The Kozos, as you know, are from another world. They were well prepared for their invasion, and fought like tigers to carve a foothold after they came through that blasted rift. What does that have to do with prophecy? That is precisely what makes a mind great. All great people can, well, they can, after a fashion, intuit the future. My order, in sniffing out prophecy, found all the great minds we needed to win the war. We ensured they were in key positions through the army, and in doing so, swiftly brought the Kozos to the bargaining table. You were one of them. Did you ever wonder why you were so rapidly promoted? I didn't have time to wonder. Concern for Albert overrode any questions she had about her own life. With the war won, we turned our attention to extracting prophecy to prevent the next one. The Kozos aren't going home any time soon, and he paused when he saw Agnella looking uncertain.
Extracting may not be the right word. Think of it more like steeping a tea. The leaves remain afterwards.
You want to boil my son's mind and leave him shriveled, flavorless?
No, there is no clear analogy then. Soaking transfers it on the quicksilver, similarly to a printing press, perhaps. The prophecy can then be put to use. Albert will go on to live exactly the life he would have done otherwise. It must be strong in him, too. Your whole house reeks of it.
He gestured with his lit cigarette at the pile of butts he had made in his attempts to endure the scent. What is your name? Agnella, her thoughts overloaded, finally asked the mind soaker, the most basic of pleasantries.
Caranas.
Albert returned a few minutes later, whistling as he opened the front door. The tune abruptly stopped when he saw the looks on the faces of the mind soaker and his mother.
What is it?
He asked. Agnella told him. She explained what they had to do and why they had to do it, but she took care to leave out the crime she had committed to conceive him. She watched the small frown lines on his handsome young face crinkle in thought as he digested all she told him. Moments later, Agnella found herself helping him up to sit on the table and then gently lowering him backwards towards the bowl. When Caranas poured one of his vials of quicksilver into the water, it did not drop to form a wet shape at the bottom of the bowl, but rather it clung to the surface and stretched out in oddly straight lines to form a web of glistening, inorganic patterns. Agnella helped to submerge the back of Albert's head in it, and though he looked at her nervously, she saw that her son trusted her implicitly. Caranas thrust his hands into the water on either side of Albert's head. He seemed to grit his teeth against some unseen effort, and his lips tenaciously gripped his latest cigarette. A blue and purple haze flickered into life above the bowl. Albert kicked out in alarm, but Agnella held him steady. It's all right. It can't harm you. She reassured him, wondering if she believed Caranas enough to subject her son to much more of this madness. She looked up at the mind soaker and saw that his eyes were trying to roll back and his face was twitching. It is all right, isn't it, Caranas? The mind soaker did not answer her. Instead, his lips and teeth parted, dropping his cigarette, and he hissed like a kettle approaching a boil, before rasping out halting words which horrified Agnella.
The Kozo half of him, it has reacted strangely. I can see another world, and I see the end of all things. It is nearing the rift. So near now. No wonder those bastards fought so hard. They were fleeing.
Agnella made to tear her son away from the bowl, but Caranas gripped the boy's head with ferocious strength. Albert's scream of alarm turned into a stream of quicksilver-streaked bubbles as he was pushed under the water. The boy's thrashing kicks knocked over the pile of clean washing, and Agnella slapped the mind soaker hard enough to deaden her hand.
Stop it!
She yelled. He did not flinch from her blow or show any sign of stopping. Agnella dashed to retrieve her sabre and, charging, swung it at his arm. The edge of the blade had dulled long ago, but the weight of it broke his elbow with a satisfying crack. She dragged Albert up out of the water as the mind soaker fell to the ground. Quicksilver ran in shiny rivulets through his matted hair, and she deftly helped clear his eyes, nose, and mouth of the stuff. You're okay now. I've got you. Agnella drew her son into a cradling embrace as he shivered the last of his panic away. The mind soaker groaned from where he had fallen. Agnella watched him cautiously as he sat himself against the wall and then picked his cigarette case up from the floor. He opened it one-handed and then sagged, looking defeated. All gone, he muttered to himself, dropping it again and wincing as the pain she had inflicted caught up with him.
You bastard! Nothing nefarious, you said.
Agnella pointed her sabre at him.
Believe me, had you seen what I saw in there, you would have needed to know more too.
I don't think you understand how motherhood works.
I'm sorry. Sorry that I got carried away. I'm done now. All that remains is to return to Lakata and tell the council we're fucked, we're doomed. Then we can start working on what might be done about it. We've beaten long odds before. Bellis, bristling with rage and red in the face, burst in on them. His cotton shirt clung to his massive shoulders, and she saw he was covered in bits of dried water reed from his work. I heard yelling, he said as his eyes took in the sabre, the damp Albert, and the downed Mindsoaker. You fucking bastard! Trying to drown my son whilst I'm away working, are you? Bellis hauled Caranus up and dragged him out of the house as though he weighed nothing. Bellis, wait! Shouted Agnolo, but there was no stopping him. Albert still gripped her tightly, and he was too heavy to carry easily now. She powered after the fighting men, pumping her legs to keep up, and watched Caranus slap ineffectually at Bellis's implacable grip as he was dragged across the cobbles towards the village well. Bellis chucked the Mindsoaker into the shadow cast by the well, and then tipped the heavy wooden cover from it. Whilst the big man was busy, Caranus stumbled to his feet and drew the dagger from his belt. Agnolo felt cold fear creep into her heart and yelled out a warning. Knife! Bellis's massive hand clamped around the wrist of the only good arm left to the Mindsoaker and wrenched it sideways. There was an audible click. Caranus's scream was cut off when Bellis picked him up by the throat and tossed him down the well. She rushed over and looked down to see the crumpled form of the Mindsoaker floating face down in the shadowy depths. You're both all right? Bellis asked, radiating concern. Yes, but now I need to go to Lakata. Why? To see your sister? No, to save the world.
That's very cool.
Thank you.
But I know exactly what you meant by saying that you had the same problem with me, where as soon as you got the chance to press the accelerator a bit more than normal, you had a lot more story come out than possibly you intended. Because that,
yeah,
I want to know now what happens next. Did she save the world? What's coming? What's on the other side of the rift, my man? What is it?
People might. I think some people might consider that an unfinished story. I think other people might say, no, it does resolve everything that's happening in this location for these people. Like the story of how the Mindsoaker interviewed her, soaked the kids, and then sort of, went too far and died for it.
Yeah,
is completed. But yeah, it definitely does open the world up a little bit. I don't think you don't. I don't know. I might be just talking out my ass here, but I feel like you don't have to fully close off something like a story like this.
No, I mean there's lots of great stories that tell part of the tale of a world. You don't have to. Not everything has to be Tolkien. You don't have to eventually write the beginning of time, and then notes that allow you to know what happens for the rest of foreseeable time. It is a slice of that world. The character is interesting enough that now I want to know what she will do next. And I think that's probably a good sign, because if she wasn't, if I was like, well, I don't care what happens now, because the Mindsoaker was the interesting one, then that would be bad. But I got both of their perspectives from it, which was cool. It was nice to think, well, yeah, of course he wants to know more if it's a world-ending apocalypse. And it's nice to side with her because, it's a mother's instinct. She's doing what she has to do for a kid.
Yeah.
I had a question though. The Mindsoakers won the war. They've been doing all this stuff to people. Had they never forcibly tried to soak a Kozo before then?
Yeah, I think the idea is that because he's obviously a new generation of the kid is born from that conflict.
Yeah.
So I suspect there hasn't been much intermingling.
Yeah.
So they haven't found a Kozo that they could soak, because I think you have to have this kind of that kind of idea behind why the great minds are great minds sort of thing.
you got like a predetermined fate thread that is going to rip out and put some Quicksilver, which was a really cool concept, by the way.
Yeah, I saw it less as like predetermined fate and more like they could do
potential.
something great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like they had the potential to do something great. And the reason they have the potential to do that is because they can very mildly intuit how to get there.
Yeah.
You know, like how inventors, as soon as they invent something and everyone's like, oh, why hadn't we thought of this before?
Yeah.
If that felt like it already existed, but it's just been invented, like that kind of feeling. I love the idea about just being like, okay, we are losing this war. What about if we just put like hyper competent, potentially like great generals in place throughout the army structure
and just see what they do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just like allow them. So like every small raid, every like Black Ops sea operation, they all had these kind of people doing them.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, I liked that concept. Yeah, go on.
There's some good stuff with the her sort of like now homemaker instincts. Like she went outside, and we got to see both sides of her. Where she was like, "Well, actually, the laundry's probably ready, so I'll just bring that while I'm out."
Yeah.
But then still thought, "I'll take the sword just in case." I was glad that it became involved with the washing line after us talking about it last time.
That was too good an idea for me to not like do something with. I think
I thought it was really interesting. We both ended up with some factory stuff in it because you're talking about it smelling like oranges left to turn in piss.
Yeah.
And that he'd been smoking to cover it. But I don't remember if you talked about, because you spoke a lot about the sort of visual element of the cigarettes, but not about if they had a strong smell.
The reason I didn't do that is because they do you remember at the start that it says that they like go and like escape out the window, like the smoke like automatically goes out the window. So I think the idea is that they're like a personal thing for him, and then
they don't leave a smell for anyone.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, cool. No, that's cool. I definitely get what you meant. Like the first half feels very paced, and then I think there is even though it's all really well written, it became clear that you wanted to get certain things in and them to happen. And I know that you could have written 10,000 words just about the kid with his head in the bowl and the Mind Soaker doing like weird magic to him and the Quicksilver going and then her breaking his arm. And there's loads of really cool moments, but I definitely felt you having to ramp up.
Do you mean
I don't think rushed? I don't know as much as rushed. Possibly only with the husband suddenly being back. Because it made it difficult to work out the scale of how far away he was working from them. Because the kid didn't take that long taking him his food and bringing it back. But then the dad was sort of very suddenly there. Well, not his dad, long. But the husband was very suddenly there. Yes. But then he was still, an interesting character and very cool, and he was a tipping point. He was a necessary element. Unless I think the only other way you could do it is that, because the kid's got so much potential, if he had done something. But I did like the great big guy didn't stop to ask for an explanation and just straight up. I particularly liked that this guy's clearly like a military official and he's magic, and the guy was just like, "Nah, fuck him," and just smashed him down a well. That's a cool character.
I'm trying to think, like, what's the kind of man that this this impressive woman would have married? And I think he's this kind of like, very straightforward, shall we say, fellow.
Yeah.
Like he sees the world in a very simple way, but
yeah,
that's not a bad thing. That doesn't mean that he's like lacking in intelligence or anything like that. It's just like he doesn't see the point in overcomplicating shit.
You set up the scale of him well as well, talking about his massive shirts when she was bringing the laundry in, and
yeah, that was part of the reason because that was character building for her, as you already pointed out, but it was also foreshadowing him as well. So there were a few points throughout the story that I was trying to make things go double service.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
It's one of the things that was just in your performance that was really good, and it was after the Mind Soaker said magic, you did a sort of like a little laugh, like he sort of giggled, about calling it magic, and it was one of my favorite things in the whole story, because it's like he clearly knows something about it, that like it's science or there's some other element to it that he's like they wouldn't get it anyway if I told them. Just like
Yeah,
magic.
why go
Yeah.
into the details of it? Because you can just say magic. You can just slap a magic label on it,
Yeah.
and they get it. Yeah, the Bellis returning thing I think is a crucial bit in the feedback. I think because it does need to that does need to scan correctly in order for that ending to
Yeah.
pay off. I think for myself, I felt like I had done enough that as you point out, that the son had gone to go and give him his lunch. The likelihood of
Yeah.
him saying that there was someone at the house is quite high.
Pretty high, yeah.
So potentially he was like already wrapping up. You know what I mean? Like he was like, "Oh, I'll get this done, and then I'll go home now,
Yeah.
find out what the fuck's going on."
I'll take the cloth back under the pretense of returning it and make sure everything's all right indoors.
Yeah, go and butt in basically. But the other thing that potentially I need to illustrate more is that there is a bit of a passage of time, because there's the shouting from when she's telling him to stop drowning her son.
Yeah.
She slaps him, she hits him with a sword. There's all sorts of like kerfuffle happening, which would be quite loud in a village, I think. And then there's sort of like a slow moment after he's had his arm broken. He's no longer harassing the child, and he's checking his cigarette case, and he's sort of having that sort of defeated soldier moment, isn't he? And I sort of feel like that's enough time for someone to get across a village, because it's not necessarily like it's a town maybe, but if it hasn't scanned correctly, then I need to work on that, I think. Do you have any pointers as to?
I don't think so. I think it might be one that, cause I was so caught up in all of the fast things that were happening that I didn't really get time to, because obviously it ramps into action, so that all felt like it was like bam, 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 and I don't think I caught the slowdown. But
Yeah,
that might be one where, like if I read it on the page, it might feel different, or when I listen again, it might. I do want to say as well, the change you made to on the thin ice of her patience.
yes,
So much better, so much clarity.
Yep.
It sold it properly. Where did the other two kids go?
Yeah, they're off like scrumping apples, I guess.
Yeah, they went for the apples.
There was
They're going to come back to a fucking situation.
Yeah, there was a sort of like, I started writing like a half paragraph about them like you're returning with some like apples in their aprons sort of thing.
Yeah.
and just sort of watching their dad choke slam someone down a well, and then sort of like dropping the apples and then them bouncing over the cobbles. But I thought it was too comedic, and it put me about 200 words over the word cap. So
I'd have allowed that for a gag.
Oh yeah.
Uh-oh!
I'm not sure it needed a gag, like it's but maybe it did. It's always good
lots of double, like you say you set up the well because he said I'm going to go and get water from the well, and then he ended up in it. It was the Chekhov's smoking well, I suppose.
Yeah, I wrote down Chekhov's saber whilst I was taking notes from you last week. There was this idea. I know last week you were talking about there was so many things in it that needed to pay off in the second half.
Yeah.
So I sort of wrote them down. I was like, okay, so the saber, the question of what is mind soaking, who the Kozos are,
yes,
and why are they census taking? Like, what's the purpose of that? What's the deeper purpose of that?
Yeah.
I feel like I ticked all of those. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I really liked the concept of the Kozos as well, of them being foreigner to the nth degree by having come through a gap in space and time, and for it to be revealed that it's kind of like an asylum seeking thing because they're fleeing some monstrous end of the world. That's very cool. It did make me think of Pacific Rim, because the hole the monsters come through is called the Rift.
The Rift, yeah. Well, I wonder whether I was unconsciously channeling that, because do you remember the story that I wrote with a character in it called Bowtree, who was like a gondola man on a river? and he would
Yes.
transport bits like without using technology in order to give them to a holy sect who were building a holy mech to send through
Yeah.
a gateway to reclaim worlds that had been lost to demons.
Yes.
I had a vague idea that these stories could be somehow connected.
How fun.
You know what I mean? Like this could be one of the worlds that they went to when they fled. Yeah, something I don't know. It was just you if you have like 150 story ideas over a period of a few years, they eventually start to like feed off each other. I think
They bleed into each other.
no, it's
I
tricky.
do.
Yeah, it's tricky writing to that length after writing to
Yeah.
1500 for so long. I think.
It's definitely a very different discipline,
Yeah.
and it's actually almost surprising to me how different it felt because in my head it's like, well, it's just writing and it's just like sort of a bit more. But if you told me I had to do anything else double the amount I normally do it, I would have to think about it.
Yeah.
Like if you were like jump twice as high as you normally jump, and obviously that's not one for one, but it did really hammer home for me how even those relatively small changes can affect how you tell stories, because we have sharpened the blade of telling 800 to 1500 word stories pretty aggressively over the last couple of years. So it was nice and definitely challenging, like way harder than a lot of our, and we do struggle sometimes with the normal episode stories, but for me, way
Yeah.
harder than I find it a lot of the time to write a short piece. And I
The
found myself questioning myself and my writing a lot more. I was like, I was really happy with the first part. Is this living up to the first part? Am I doing it properly? Am I doing it right? So yeah, it was definitely
yeah. Obviously, we've got the
challenge.
slightly added complication of having read out the first half very publicly first, and
You
then
can't exactly scrap it.
and then you sort of, we were saying last week, you sort of set it up, and then it's either fall on your face or hit the ball, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think we did both strike the ball, but I think we both had pacing issues,
Yes, I'd agree.
and that I think that's quite funny after years
Do you know?
of going, oh, I wish I had more words.
Do you know what?
Yeah, go on.
Genuinely, do you know what I think it is? If I'm really thinking about it, we both were like, well, we've got this first one, so I can use that to set up all this lovely stuff and do world building, and then didn't think about the fact that we had to get the whole rest of a story in something with equivalent length. So we both allowed those possibly wrong impulses that we get the rest of the time to expand on things to happen. I wouldn't normally do a whole bit about another orb coming over, and then I would have just, in our normal word length, he'd have shown one alien a magic trick and it would have taken him to the ship. So we got to be more expansive, but I think that's come at the cost of having to do the second part and going, oh man, I sure did make myself a fucking mess to tidy up here.
I think it's difficult, isn't it? I don't necessarily think that I added too much more like world building to the story in the second half. I think
I'd agree. You
but I
cemented
like,
the world building you'd done. Yeah.
But definitely, I think like going back and re-smoothing this over with an eye just for pacing, I think would be beneficial to at least mine. I think because I'm fairly pleased with it. I like the characters. I like the setting. I like
I
the
do
way
too.
I like the kind of the rhythm of the writing in that one feels quite good to me. Like I enjoyed that and I enjoyed reading it out. But yeah, it does ramp up just a little bit too fast. Maybe that climax could be more sort of like heavily foreshadowed. Yeah, just it feels like it just needs a little tweak, and I'm just not entirely sure what nudge it needs. So yeah, I'll figure it out.
They can all join us next week for the 4,500 word versions of this story.
Don't promise that. Don't do that.
Cut to us in 200 episodes time. Okay, we've written these massive epic novels based on a very cool fantasy concept from Ben, and apparently a magician and some balls from Nick.
Oh crikey! Well, we did magic and we did mind, which added together make Magic Mind, which as you know from the start of this episode, there is a link that you can all follow if you want to give it a try, and you'll get a ton of money off, basically. That link is magicmind.com/ttb20. Yeah, let us know what you think. We've enjoyed it. Like, we've been taking it and we've been writing stories on it. So it's sort of like taking performance enhancing, like creativity enhancing drugs, that, isn't it? but it's all good. It's all good stuff.
Yeah, let's. I want to see everyone's lion's manes once you've had some lion's mane, baby. Let's do this.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For rich ginger tones on their scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La, How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?